Great, thank you very much. So my name is Iris Zarecki, and I'm Director at Product Marketing here at Explorium, and I'm very excited to be here today. 2 words about Explorium. What we do is help you fuel your growth with the right data. What that means is that our platform combines the world's best data sources in a single place so that you can enrich accounts, improve lead scoring, and identify the right opportunities for you. And I'm very happy to have with me today Scott Tyler, the Data Whisperer. Scott, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, Iris. How are you? Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. I help calm data down. We're all in data whisperers in our own way. I like to be the data whisperer. I'm 30-something years in the data space, actually from the external data side. So I worked at Dun & Bradstreet, Nielsen, consulted for Kantar, so have dealt with every kind of company at every level of maturity in every category all over the world in external data. So that just limits my scope for you a little bit. I do a tremendous amount of content. If you see some of these thumbnails on there, a puppet show called Too Much Tech Talk, a nice data governance bedtime story I read my grandson, and I also wrote a book called Telling Your Data Story, Data Storytelling for Data Management. You can see right on the cover, it's 99% buzzword free. So if you're looking for funding for this kind of stuff, take a look at those pieces of content. But the reason I'm here today is to really support Explorium and Iris on this idea of using external content for your go-to-market strategies. I started talking to them about a year ago, really excited about their platform and some of the unique ways they can bring this kind of data to you in a very simple and easy to use manner, which we will definitely get into the challenges of dealing with external data. But so that's enough for my slide, but we're ready to go here. Good to see everyone.
Excellent. So let's talk about our agenda for today. We'll start by talking about the evolution of data in go-to-market teams and how GTM teams are using data today, and some of the challenges that they have today. We'll then talk about how to modernize your go-to-market strategies to include external data, and finish with a couple of use cases about lead scoring and lead generation and how to take them to the next level with some data. And of course, as was mentioned before, we'll finish with some questions and answers. So feel free to type in your questions right now, and we'll address them throughout the webinar or at the end.
And in case you didn't catch it, the most popular question is always, do I get the slides? Yes, you'll get the slides in the recording. So we'll make sure you're covered.
Thank you, Scott. That's good. So let's get started. So let's talk about the evolution of CMOs in B2B marketing. And it's interesting to see that, you know, in the 1960s, it was the madman area and everything was around the brand. A lot of brands spend, and a lot of creativity, passion, best ideas won, you know, that kind of a thing. Then I think in year 2000, it became all about growth and all about demand generation. And it was about the largest and fastest growth to win, where marketing all of a sudden was able to make some impact on the business and also measure that impact on the business, which is also very, very important. And today, maybe it's the era of operations and data. That doesn't sound very sexy like Mad Men, but it's still very relevant. And I think the recession has made it even more relevant when many of us are moving from growth at all costs to efficient growth. And efficient means seeing what's going on, looking at your data and making some sense out of it and taking that to the next level. And I think the focus now is becoming more and more around go-to-market operations. Some people call them RevOps, marketing ops. These are the people that know how to work with data. They know how to identify some gaps or issues with the data they have already. And they can also make sense out of the data to direct the teams to take it to the next level. So what's working and what's not working, and make some adjustments and decisions based on your data and the insights that come out of it. So the use of data in marketing is not an option anymore. It's the only option. And we see that there is an explosion of data. There is a lot of data. Marketing is already using a lot of data today. But there are still many challenges around the data that marketing is using today. Think about product-led growth, for example, PLG. Many of us are beginning to try those motions, go-to-market motions around PLG, and there's a lot of data generated on every lead that comes in to our product-led growth. But can you really make sense out of that data? Can you really identify the good leads and spot them quickly so that you can do something better with them or faster with them? And can you do it at scale? So these are all questions that come to marketing minds when you think about data and operations in marketing today. And I was talking about an explosion. Oops, I'm sorry. And we also see an explosion of data providers, alternative data providers. And you can see many providers, which and names you definitely recognize and probably also using today around consumer behavior, around company commercial information, things like Bloomberg and Dun& Bradstreet and all those guys can provide almost all information you need about commercials. There's providers around product, around web traffic, around foot traffic. There is a new provider that emerges every day. How do you keep track of those? And how do you find the right data that is right for you and relevant for you? That's a question, and finding the right data is definitely becoming a challenge.
And I worked at a
Scott?
couple of, there you go, in that
Mm-hmm.
vast landscape of ever-growing data sources, worked at more than my share, but there's no shortage of excellent, well-structured, verified, syndicatable data. And part of why I think syndicated data is so important is that those companies are literally in the data business. I know we talk a lot about how everybody's in the data business. You know, if you don't make data, in my view, you're not in the data business. That's like saying everybody's in the paperclip business because we all use paper clips. But there are companies out there, and I used to work for a few of them, that really that's all they do. And so those sources tend to be really high quality, really dependable, but then how do you access them? How do you integrate them? Stay tuned and we'll share some of those thoughts with you.
Right, exactly. But before we go to the solution, let's talk about the problem. And these are some very recent research. This one on the right-hand side in green from Salesforce. And what are some of the common challenges that marketeers have with data today? And we see that data accuracy is a big one. How do you make sure the data that you're using or want to use is really accurate, is correct, is up to date, is fresh, and is of quality? How do you connect it and unify it from multiple sources? We saw that explosion on the previous slide. Different data sources come in different schemas with different keys and IDs. How do you combine all of that into something that actually makes sense? And maybe number 4 is also important here, data variety. I think we're all used to just using, firmographic about a company to qualify a lead and things like that, but there's so much more data out there. Maybe I want to look at growth of a specific department in that company. Is the HR department growing right now or not? If they're growing, they might be open to a software solution that I want to propose to them. If they're reducing right now, they're definitely not open to a call from my SDR. So how can I use those additional, unique, untrivial, new data sources out there to make some decisions? So variety is a big deal, but maybe the opposite of it is the ability to unify that data from so many different sources. And then on the left-hand side in orange, you see another research that talks again about the same things. So it's about the data integration, it's about the activation and enrichment. So you've got all this data and you're not able to really use that. You're paying for it, but you're not really taking advantage of it. And maybe I also like the last one, market segmentation. So, this is as old as marketing, probably. We talked about marketing segmentations forever. How come I have all of this new data and I'm still not able to segment my market correctly? So it's interesting. And we ran our own survey that you can see here on this slide and ask specifically about external data. And we see that, again, the challenges come back and they're the same set challenges for external data and for internal data. So again, talking about data prep and integration, that's the biggest one, obviously, but also governance and compliance. is really big when it comes to external data. In addition to trusting your data and making sure it's accurate and up to date, you also need to make sure it complies with the latest and greatest regulations, rules and regulations around privacy, GDPR, all of those. You cannot use data which is not up to those standards, obviously. So that's a big one when it comes to external data. And also here on the bottom, you can see another problem that comes up is, again, you have all of this data providers that you're already working with. We talk to customers about external data day in, day out, and there's not one customer that is not using some sort of external data today. But are they able to take it to the next level? Are they able to extract value from that external data that they have today? And the question is, or the answer is not always. And some of the issues are that, again, you can see here, integration and quality and accuracy. We talked about that. But number 3 here, 46% are saying that they need a better way to find the right data for their use case. This is a big problem. There's almost too much data. And how can you find the one that is relevant for the specific use case that you are trying to solve, whether it's segmentation or lead scoring or whatever? So that's an interesting one. And another one that I wanted to highlight is this one around machine learning models. 31% say that they need a better way, a more flexible way to deploy their machine learning models. And I think what we see in marketing specifically is that number one, they don't have a data scientist in staff. So they have all of this data in their Salesforce, in their HubSpot, from many different data vendors that they're using today. But they're not able to take that data, combine it, shape it, and model it, and push it into a machine learning model. They don't have that skill set in-house today, and they need a way to do that. Otherwise, the data just sits there and is, again, useless and not used to take it to the next level. So that's another problem.
When I was working
Mhm.
with when I was working with Dun and Bradstreet and Nielsen, the number one reason people didn't renew is because they didn't use it enough. And that tends to be something at enterprises a lot of you suffer from. It's not that the data wasn't what it was promised to be. It was more, we just didn't get to it. We didn't use it. We couldn't integrate it. We couldn't get it into our processes. So big challenge.
Yeah, good point. We hear that a lot as well. Good. And maybe one last research, and Scott, I promise you it's the last one for today. Uh, but I couldn't help it. I
Always got to
attended
hear
the
from
Gartner.
Gardner. We always got to hear from Gardner.
Exactly. Right. Couldn't do a webinar without Gartner. So I attended the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit last month in Orlando. It was very interesting. And I think this slide, I really loved it because it's kind of summarized my philosophy in life here. So, it's about not just data, not just having more data. It's about how can I find the right data? Do I have the right data for my use case? That's exactly what we pitch at Explorium. They also talked about analytics and how analytics is both an art and a science, which again, I really liked. It's not just an art or not just a science, it's the combination of them. And data scientists need to be explorer and need to find the right analytics for the right insights for the business in order to drive the right decisions and outcomes. And I know that you like to talk about governance, and we'll talk about that later on, but it all comes back to governance. And Gartner talked about that a lot. But some of the core principles that we talk about with every type of data have to remain whatever you do with your data. I'm sure you agree.
This really does kind of simplify it in a way that I also agree is very nice and clear. You've got data and analytics, and those are two separate things in my view. One is I look at it as truth and meaning. Data is the truth. You got to determine the truth in data. Is it the quality you need? Can I trust it? And then you derive meaning out of it. It's not chicken or egg here. It's egg and omelet. It has to go in that order. Determine the truth first, and then you can derive meaning, and then you can make, with that meaning, that'll enable those business decisions that are so critical. And as I'm often fond of saying, good decisions you make on bad data are just bad decisions you don't know about yet. So you've got to make sure you've got that truth fueling your meaning to make those decisions. And one last point, I appreciate the fact that they put governance on the bottom. It is a foundational activity for every enterprise that wants to leverage data in a strategic way, which I assume 100% of you listening do want to do. But it's on, you put it on the bottom. You don't put it on the side or the top or the middle. It is truly that foundation that allows you to unify the process and make sure you're getting the value that you're looking for.
I agree. To kind of summarize this part of the presentation, we talked a lot about how using data in go-to-market programs today is not an option, it's the only option. But at the same time, there is some challenges. There's an explosion of data providers, and the challenge is, can you find the right data, and can you use it in your go-to-market programs? And the impact of that challenge is threefold. You see it with sales, you see it with marketing, and you see it with the operations team, the RevOps team. And let me pick a few examples here. So for sales, for example, it's all about efficiency and effectiveness. You don't want your salespeople wasting time doing research or calling the wrong prospect that you will never convert to a customer. So the question is, if they don't have access to the right data, if they don't have a reliable scoring mechanism that tells them if this is the right prospect, yes or no, then they're not effective and they're wasting their time doing other things. So that's a big, big impact on sales when they don't have, or when they have limited data and are not able to use the data properly. In marketing, it's really the same thing, but it's all about scalability. And it's about identifying the right leads out of those huge number of leads that come in, identifying the right ones right away at scale so that you can take action. So inbound lead qualification, for example, is something that many companies do, but they do it in a very simple way, very narrow, look just at firmographic and not using this wealth of other information that they have about the company to do the smarter lead scoring. And last but not least, operations and RevOps. I told you, I truly believe this is the area of operations and data. And they are the guys that are trying to find the right data, to give it and share it across the different platforms, the different teams. Think about sales and marketing. In many cases, they're not using the same data. And it's the RevOps folks, the poor RevOps folks, that are trying to give them the same data or make sure they look at the same metrics. So it's a tough job for revenue operations. And if they have the right data across the board and can share it with teams in the place that they prefer to, in the platform that they prefer to consume it, whether it's Salesforce or marketing automation or whatever, what have you, it makes their jobs so much easier. So that's some of the consequences and impact. And let's move on to the next part of the presentation. Scott?
How do we get this done here? How do we modernize it? How do you do this at scale? Every business is trying to provide value to their relationships through their brands at scale, and that's what we're about here. So this is not a handcrafted kind of approach. Micro targeting, you've got millions of opportunities. How do you bring the next best offer in the right moment? Lots of ways to think about this. And I actually wanted to kind of, we can go to the next slide, think about a little bit of a metaphor here. I like the poetic side of the data space. If any of you follow me, you'll know that I love to talk about how we talk about data. And I think there's a lot of confusing imagery out there. So I'd like to simplify it. And I found that there was a really interesting parallel between this access and distribution and integration of music, which I assume 100% of you enjoy at some level, and the history of access and distribution and integration of data. So go with me here. So if you see on the far left-hand side, first of all, I'd like to know who knows what that little symbol is. Any of you in the chat, let me know if you know what that is. What was the first symbol that you have on there that was your first music collection? I'd like to know that as a little tidbit. Mine was not that crazy little symbol at the end there, which is an adapter that you'd put in a 45 record, for those of you who know what that is, to make the big record go on a little teeny spindle. My first music collection was an LP. If you had LPs in those days, big vinyl, so you went from like, my mom could only buy one song, then I could buy the whole album, but that album was already set. I had to buy the whole album, even if I only wanted one or two songs. You were just stuck with that. Then we went to cassette tapes, where you could take the albums and kind of transfer them in an order. Forget about the right to copy it or not. But I was in high school, nobody was busting us for that stuff. Then you went to CDs, which was a huge transformation. And I would suggest the point where music went from analog to truly digital in the ability to share it and access it in a lot of different other contexts. You could walk around. I had a Walkman for the cassettes, but you also, once you had a portable CD player, suddenly you could go anywhere and hear what you wanted, where you wanted, in a much more accessible way. Then, before you know it, they introduced the iPod and other MP3 devices that allowed you to put every piece of music you ever had on one of these little things. That was a blowaway for me. My kids were born with it, so they don't realize how spoiled they are. And now today, we're at this point where you can stream and access content, meaning music, in any kind of fashion, any type of content from any device through services like Spotify and Pandora. So hopefully you see the parallel there between the old time. And again, I used to work at some of these companies back in the day. We had to deliver these big bricks of data, and almost sometimes we had to give somebody a computer because they didn't have enough room, and they could sort it. They couldn't integrate it anywhere. They had to use it the way we delivered it. To fast forward to today, the ability to almost stream data and get access and have it integratable into your personal workflow. That's the point we're trying to make here. And that also really amplifies and shines a light on the capabilities that Explorium has in terms of being able to deliver the right content in the right place, almost curated for you, the same way Spotify or Pandora might curate your music. So hopefully that little analogy trip down memory lane helped you think about a broader kind of distribution, access, and integration of data in the world we sit today.
Yeah, I
Where
love
eight
the
tracks, I'm getting
analogy.
some, yeah, eight tracks in there. That I'm Colleen, I think eight track was a nightmare. I think we all agree eight track probably the worst one, but you're right. I'll try and put that in there. That was such a crazy, but it's, it's all we had.
Yeah, I love the analogy, and that, yes, we definitely see that at Explorium. I think if in the past you were working with one or two data providers and you had to buy the whole album, exactly like you said, and listen to all the songs. Today, on one hand, you're working with so many data providers already. In marketing, it's anywhere between 5 and 20 that you're already working with today. And you don't want all the data that they want. You want this signal from this provider and another one from that one. You just want the songs that you like, and that's all you want to listen to. So I love the analogy. Thank you, Scott.
Then we get into kind of how you evaluate the data. So I like to think about these 5 pillars when you to help people guide people to understand, okay, what data is important to me? And especially when you look at that vast array of sources, how do you really start to determine, okay, what stuff is going to help my business? So I think of it in these 5 different pillars: value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality. You really start with the value side. And when I mean value, it's value to you. Every data provider is going to tell you that their data is the greatest in the world and can do anything, do all these great things. But if you're an automotive company and the data somebody has is about fruits and vegetables, just to keep a bizarre example, that's not going to help you. So it has to have real business relevance for the work you're trying to do and align with the strategic intentions of your enterprise. You move to the next pillar, which is structure. How do you align all this data? How do you make sure it's integratable? And I think of these 4 C's that I'm actually going to go into in a moment: code, company, category, country, as a way to think about structure, ontology, taxonomies, that sort of thing. But a really short version is all these data sources you want to think of as kind of columns. But how do you align the rows? That's the hard part, aligning the rows. Every data source you've got, think of it as another column in a spreadsheet. But if you got all those spreadsheets and you banged them together, we all know that columns are easy and rows are very difficult. So you got to align. The columns are what the rows are what the columns are about. That's the point. So you want to make sure you've got that all aligned. Then is it connectable? Is it integratable? Can you get it into your systems to make sure it's at the as close to the point of decision as possible? How do you take this data, whatever it happens to be, and after you put the analysis on it, how do you allow and enable a field force or your sales force or your marketing team or whoever is out there in front of customers to help them make those decisions right away with trusted content? Does it cover what you're looking for? So again, there's a lot of great data sources out there, but see if and you might want to test them, you might want to have a little taste, but what if you want to go into production with it? Does it cover your business? Figure out a way to determine, okay, is it these markets, are these geographies, these categories, these segments, whatever that coverage denominator is, you want to make sure you've got the right coverage. So even though you've got a fabulous data that only works on, 4 different little things somewhere in one little geography, you're not going to really able to expand and get the value you want. And then obviously quality. It comes down to that every time. So can you trust this data? Has it been curated the right way? Are you supposed to have access to it? That's what you're depending on third-party data providers for, to make sure that those things are in place. So value, structure, connectability, coverage, and quality, just kind of a simple way to help you evaluate data. And I will tell you, from my 30 plus years of experience, this is how customers would evaluate data that got the most value out of it. Going a little deeper here, I want to talk about these 4 C's, if you will. It's a way to think about data structure. So you've got 4 C's: a code, a company, a category, and a country. And these are the dimensions a lot of people use when they want to access or integrate or evaluate or distribute data. So the first one is a code. Does this thing even exist? Is it authenticated? Is there uniqueness? How many things do we have? That's based on having a unique number. And all these data sets have some form of unique number, and all of your data has unique numbers on it as well: customer numbers, product IDs, ERP number, Salesforce ID, whatever it happens to be. Of course, you've got to unify those or harmonize them or integrate them in some way. But if you have a code, you exist in a database. Then you need a company, some form of hierarchy structure. And we're talking B2B here. So a lot of the data that you're looking for is probably about companies or brands or products or services or things that have a stronger, a formal hierarchical structure. Ship to, build to, plan to, sell to. Very important use cases like, okay, you're sending a salesperson to that bottom left oval. Do they know it's related to the bottom right oval that hasn't paid its bills yet? Those kinds of very simple use cases are things you've got to understand. So you've got to have a hierarchy structure. Then for category, you need to know what kind of thing it is. Category drives market share, targeting that we talked about, lead scoring, what sector, what vertical, what industry do we have that we're trying to target. You're really good in this kind of, with this kind of company. How do you find more of that kind of company? So taxonomy and that category structure is really important. And I'm sure I've done a lot of work in master data management. I've taken a look at a lot of enterprise data. And I'm sure if you look at your own category structure, you don't have to admit it here, but I'm sure many of you have a category called other. You have other or other. That's the word. Well, only when I saw it didn't have other, had an attribute value DK, and we asked them what that meant, and they said it stood for don't know. It's just a different kind of other. So you want to make sure you've got a category structure on there. And just because they all start with C, you want country or some form of geography. And geography's got all kinds of granularity to it. It could be zip code or postal code or city or state or province or media market or sales market or measurement market, all these different configurations of geography. But if you get these 4 C's and you think about them, if you go to the next slide here, it really helps you establish and structure your data at the entity level, the hierarchy level, the taxonomy level, the geography level. Now, depending on the data set, these 4 C's will appear in different ways. It might be a location, an account, a channel, and a market. In a brand side, it may be a product, a brand, a segment, and a region. It might be an item, an owner, a sector, and a location. But they're all things, they're parents, there's types, there's places. And what it essentially allows you to do with your own data internally, with any external data, is to know where something is, what it is, who owns it, and that it's unique. And once that structure is established, all kinds of data problems go away. And so we wish for you, and take a Zen moment here, just thinking about all those data problems going away for you. Take a deep data cleansing breath, and we're back. But those kinds of structure, think about that when you think about the way you're going to access data. And one thing I'll highlight about Explorium is even in their data profile little write-ups that they have about data sources, they talk about the ontologies. They talk about how this data comes. So it comes at the market level, it comes at the company level, it comes at the category level. It makes it a lot easier to deal with when you're trying to integrate that stuff. So one last little cartoon here, we'll put it in play as an example of the kind of reporting you probably do, that you need entities, hierarchies, taxonomies, and geographies. But if you look at this green shape here, it's a market of some sort. It could be St. Louis, it could be Asia Pac, it could be Paris. It doesn't matter what the geography is. But there's different things in that geography. As you see those little dots, they're little different types of things. That's the category. They're owned by different they're owned by different owners. That's the hierarchy. And those owners put their things in any geography they feel like, and you need to know where they are. So if you just imagine the kind of reporting you might do consistently, and a lot of the reporting you have in your enterprise is driven a lot by these basic factors. For instance, we're doing something in that green blob in the middle. How many things are in there and what type? We're working with gray. What markets are they in? We compete against blue. Who else do they deal with? So simple, crazy little cartoon here, but I think it helps boil down the essence of managing and integrating data to its atomic level: entity, hierarchy, taxonomy, geography, code, company, category, and country.
I love that. And this is exactly how we organize data in our external data cloud. So we use that same taxonomy that Scott, you described, and we focus around the business data as our starting point. And we solve a lot of those problems for you. So for example, we take those different data providers, external data providers, and unify them around what we call entity resolution. And you mentioned that we are very proud of our entity resolution because it's difficult. Think about smaller businesses. How can you really distinguish between two pizza places which are called almost the same, and they are business that you're trying to sell to? So, it's very easy to distinguish and to understand who is the entity or who is the company when we're talking about big enterprises. It's much more difficult when we're talking about small and medium businesses. So we organize everything around the business data, and we add all of those other dimensions. So while I completely agree with you, Scott, that the geography and the industry are very, very basic information that we want to know about the business, there's so much more. So for example, firmographics, everybody's using firmographics to qualify a lead, for example. But we can also provide you employee statistics and workforce trends. Is this company growing or reducing? Is a specific department is growing or reducing? What is the average tenure in this company, and what is the average education level in that company? We can provide all of that information and help you qualify that company better. We can talk about industry statistics, domain technologies, a lot of things. I'm sorry. A lot of additional signals that you can add around the company, and of course, related information. So for example, we also know who is the company owner, and we can provide his contact data and a lot of individual information about them. We have an address for the company, and we can provide a lot of geospatial data around that. So if you are a consumer packaged goods and you're looking for some demographics data to understand where should you open your next physical store in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. We can provide demographic information based on that zip code or location to help you in that understand the demographics in that area. So a lot of unconnected data, but we connect it and combine it and harmonize it for you and make it easier for you to find the data you need, but also understand what it means and how it relates to your business, to the specific companies you're looking for, and to the business problem that you're trying to solve.
A lot of users of Explorium come from the data science community. And if you hear data scientists complain, they complain all the time about how they spend 80% of their time munging and wrangling data. How about we get rid of some of that time and let them do the work that they were actually hired to do? So a lot of that non-value added chore task of finding data, integrating it, aligning it, then you get to the work that we hired them for. So
exactly, and this is exactly the part that we do for you. Our solution is really built about more data and better data in one place, already harmonized for you, already combining the best data sources out there, some of the names we talked about before. And you can see the numbers here to tell you how big is our data catalog. So how many companies we have, almost 200 million company records, including a very strong coverage of small businesses, which is a problem. Many data providers do not cover small businesses very well. Again, think about those pizza places or doctor clinics or veterinarians. If you're selling to those, you need to be able to find them and you need to learn more about them. And there is information about those small and medium businesses, but it's just harder to find. And within our data catalog, we have very good coverages of small businesses specifically, and of course, professional contact information. And we're also very proud of our data attributes, 4,000, more than 4,000 signals of data attributes around a company, an individual, a geography, and you have access to all of them and can find and identify the one that matter for your business, for your use case.
lots
And
and
maybe
lots and
the,
lots of columns, but you got to align the rows. So we take care of that too.
yes. And maybe the other part is to really help you use that data and don't let it sit there waiting for something to happen. So we help you create those go-to-market motions with the data. We do that by, number one, doing this advanced entity matching, harmonizing and normalizing the data so that you can actually look at it and use it in a meaningful way, in a reasonable way. Then we help you automatically discover the most relevant data sets and signals for your business needs. And again, that's huge because otherwise you have too much data and it's just sitting there and you're not able to find what's really relevant for you. And we know in many of the use cases that people all of a sudden discover then that a specific attribute, a specific column was really the one making a difference for a lead scoring use case, for example. But you wouldn't think about it. It's not intuitive and it's not something you would come up on your own. We also provide advanced analytics capabilities so that you can shape and model the data and to create those machine learning models, to combine that with your own internal data to create those models and understand exactly what's working or not working for your business. Um, and again, the impact or the result on sales, marketing, and operations, I'm coming back to the three columns again, is very big. So sales can really focus on just the businesses that make sense, those that fit your ICP, ideal customer profile, and focus on selling to them and not do all that research and whatever preparation before calling and selling to the wrong customers. Marketing are able to enrich leads in real time with a wide variety of attributes that they can count on and score it immediately to understand the value of an incoming lead. And operations are able to create this alignment across the data platforms, across the data providers, and across the teams to make sure everybody is seeing the same data, the same truth, and can consume it in their own platform. So if sales do everything in Salesforce, they'll find the data in there. And if marketing are doing it in HubSpot, they'll find the data in there. So you don't have to move teams around. They stay where they feel comfortable and where they're used to working, but they have all the data available to them in their platform. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. We have a little bit of time here, but I think I can get it done and talk about two very interesting use cases of how our customers are using Explorium to do lead scoring and lead generation, pipeline generation. And I think this is very good examples of real life examples of how our customers are using the platform and the data and what kind of results they saw. So the first one is Melio Payments. They are an SMB payment system, a unicorn too. And during COVID, they saw an amazing growth of leads coming into their website of people wanting to use their SMB payment system. And it makes sense. People wanted to digitalize and they want to do it right now. They didn't want to continue going to the bank and issuing checks and all of that. That couldn't happen. So they found Melio and they wanted to use their SMB platform. But the problem was that not everybody is eligible to use that SMB payment platform. You need to be a registered business in the United States in order to be eligible to use that platform. So Melio were looking for a way to quickly identify those leads that are actually eligible to use their platform. This was about 50% of the leads. So using the Explorium platform, they were able to build a machine learning scoring model around those leads and quickly validate who is eligible. And with that alone, they got a 15% uplift in conversion rate simply by identifying the leads that are eligible and could really convert to a paying customer. And they also saw an amazing 3x improvement in operational efficiency. So again, think about it. If everybody, sales and marketing, and even later product are focusing on those people that could actually convert, that makes everybody's much more efficient and much more effective. So that's an amazing use case with Melio around lead scoring and how they use external data and Explorium to build machine learning lead scoring mechanisms. And maybe the second use case that I wanted to share with you is around lead generation or pipeline generation. So this is one of our customers who are selling to SMBs. So they're a B2SMB solution provider, and growth is all they care about. And they wanted to generate 50 quality leads a week for each salesperson, and they have hundreds of salespersons. So you do the math. And they wanted to understand the geographic locations. And like I said before, SMBs are tough. It's hard to find the right address. If you think about restaurants, for example, they frequently move, they open, they close, things change all the time. Can you really identify the right location for that SMB? Can you really, is it easy to find the contact information? Again, it's very hard to find the contact information. So they were looking for 50 quality leads with all the relevant information around it per salesperson. And what we were able to do with them, for them, in a short proof of concept, is generate 650,000 leads in the relevant business categories that they defined to us. And they told us this was very high quality, much better than what they had before. And 500K contacts for just a subset of 60,000 of the businesses. So this allowed them for the sales reps to now focus on sales and not research and look for restaurants or whatever it is in specific geographies, in specific locations. It made the lead prioritization much simpler because you had all the information about why we felt this was a quality lead, and you could verify it yourself. And it streamlined marketing and sales. So when your targeting is more precise and you hit on the right potential customers, it improves metrics across the funnel, from marketing to sales to closed one business. So there's a lot of efficiency there. And I also want to share with you some of the data signals that they use. So Obviously, it's easy to talk about organizational signals like the revenue, the number of employees of a company. Again, it's harder to do that, to find that information for small and medium businesses, but it's doable, it's available. What we excelled in is also finding the parent company. So the hierarchy that you mentioned before, Scott. If this is a restaurant that had some branches, we could tell them that was the situation. We could tell them where is the headquarters and where are the branches. We could tell them the right exact latest and greatest location of those companies. We could talk a lot about technologies. So again, if you're selling to SMBs, you want to know what technology are they using on their website. Again, think about um, restaurants. Do they have delivery? Do they have payment technologies on their website? Are they using Shopify for stores? Um, all of that information we could find around those SMBs, which was very helpful in targeting just the right SMBs this provider was looking for, and a lot of company contacts. So who is the president, the marketing, the sales, the founders, all that information we provided, and of course their contact information. So very interesting use case around lead generation or pipeline generation. And with that, let's come back to the analogy.
So coming back to the analysis, let's sort of bring this poetry full circle here. So hopefully you see with some of the things that Iris went through, just the ability for Explorium to allow you almost full streaming access with predictive curation, just like your Spotify or your Pandora for music. But all poetry aside, it is the most difficult part in my experience of dealing with external data. When people talked a lot about big data when it came out, volume, velocity, and variety. I mean, volume, we've got plenty of storage. Velocity, okay, bring it on. The systems can handle it. It's the variety that'll kill you. That's the part that brings people and systems and processes to their knees. So the ability to, again, going back to my music analogy, get access to and have a system that can provide suggestions and hints and even allow you to test some of this data in a little sandbox sort of thing. These are all ways that folks can access data now, especially through Explorium, that, being an old timer here, when I started in the business, I had to pull out my little LP and make sure it didn't get scratched and put the little needle on it and listen to it in my room. All of you, again, I'm mixing my metaphors, but the ability to access this data anytime, any way in this kind of streaming fashion, I think is really a game changer in a lot of ways for using external data.
I agree.
I would hope so.
Yes. And just to summarize with a couple of ways to get started. So we were talking about go-to-market use cases along this presentation, but really we see that with our customers. Lead scoring is a good use case to start with because it's important to the business and you can see value very, very quickly. You can see the conversion rates go up. So that's easy. Pipeline generation would be my next maybe recommendation on where to get started. And the CRM enrichment, we see many problems with, cleanup and dedupe in your Salesforce system. And if you can get that new data out there and make it available for salespeople, that's great. And you can also feel free to go to our website. You have the link here, or look at our data. Use our free trial to look at our data and see it for yourself and see if it works for you. And with that, let's move on to the questions.
All right.